Hi everyone, it's Don from the MS Guide. I'm back again with somebody that I met on Instagram. His name is Matt Nags. Matt, like me, is really into his exercise, but we're actually going to have a serious discussion about why Matt's into his exercise, what it does for him, some of the hurdles that he faces, and how he gets over them. Hi Matt, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Dom.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Tell us a bit about your MS first, Matt. When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in March of 2020. In fact, it was the week that everything was starting to shut down with the COVID pandemic. That was after maybe 9 months of pursuing a diagnosis, of knowing something is wrong without a clear cut answer as to why. So finally, March of 2020, I had my answer.
It's kind of a relief and a blow at the same time, isn't it? Because the fact that the question's been answered, that little tick rapidly evaporates into what on earth is happening.
I call it like a mixed blessing because, on the one hand, thank God I'm not crazy. There actually is something wrong, right? I'd
Yeah,
been
for
told I
sure.
was crazy for the last 9 months. And at the same time, it's also, whew, okay, what do we do now?
That's a question that we all have. There's not many things that you can guarantee bind us together as a community, but what on earth is going on and what next is got to be one of them. I recently did a video with Dr. Bosser, who's not a million miles from where you are, and we were talking about fatigue. And the almost holy trinity things for dealing with fatigue is diet, sleep, and exercise. Tell us about your running.
I used to run, I would say, more casually. Gosh, I'd say for 15 years before I was diagnosed. Early on in my college days, I weighed much more than I do today. I had a conversation with my doctor that was, hey, unless you start getting healthy, you're going to die by the time you're 30. So if you were to go way back in time and look at pictures of what my kids refer to affectionately as Fat Matt, you would see the Matt that began to fall in love with running. In 2014, I ran my first half marathon. And
Wow.
I said, I don't know what it is about this, but this is really cool.
In case anybody doesn't know, that's 13 miles.
Don't forget the point one. There's a
Oh, silly me.
13.1.
Why did you start putting this up on Instagram? Why didn't you just keep it to yourself?
If you're going through something, even if it is a struggle, if other people can benefit by sharing your struggle, then that's not something that we're meant to keep to ourselves. So I had run about 5 half marathons, running maybe one a year before I started getting some pretty serious MS symptoms. And I had gotten to the point prior to diagnosis of thinking, oh my gosh, am I even going to be able to run again? Because I got to the point of only being able to maybe walk a quarter of a mile before I had Lermut's sign. For those that don't know, is the feeling of electrical shock going. For me, it was from my neck all the way through to my legs.
One thing I want to get completely clear to people, your running did not bring on your MS, did it?
Oh, no, absolutely not. It may be that I was more able to identify the symptoms because of my activity level. Certainly, no research that would indicate a high level of activity leads to an MS diagnosis. That was already in the cards.
I get the impression from you that you sort of almost doubled down on your exercise.
That's a pretty fair statement. So, when I was diagnosed finally, speaking with my neurologist on my very first appointment, he said, look, there's a lot you're going to learn. And for many people, it can be very overwhelming. So he said, let me simplify it for you. I can't predict exactly what your future looks like. But if you want to give yourself the best chance of having the best future possible, it boils down to diet, exercise, and mindset. And of course, your disease
Yeah,
modifying.
yeah. Oh, no. I mean, we
But
mentioned mindset as well, but yeah.
but I did say to myself, I can control those things. That is up to me. So it actually gave me a bit of control over my own outcome instead of that overwhelming feeling that many of us probably get once you're diagnosed of, oh my gosh, there's so much uncertainty in my future. There's nothing I can do. It was, no, wait a minute. There's actually quite a lot I can do.
You said a couple things there. I mean, personally, it really grinds my gears that people just want to have their problem solved with a pill. There are pills, should we say, or infusions or whatever that help in MS, but they help better if you've got all the other, like you said, the things that you can control. And MS, I think, makes you feel out of control. And that's a really important thing, is that you are taking control of something. You are owning it. You're owning your body composition. You're owning what you put in your mouth. When you start exercising, you're taking control. You suddenly realize it's hard. It takes a long time, but boy, is it worth it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most important attributes somebody who is looking to take control of their outcome needs to have is patience. Because, exercising for a week, that's not going to really have an impact. In fact, the impact it may have is negative. Oh man, I'm physically exhausted. I'm sore, right? And until your body adapts to that, and until your mindset adapts to that, now I feel sore after a hard day workout, or a long run. And I say, gosh, that feels great. And now, of course, I need to listen to my body and let it recover before I do something else.
I think we're all accustomed to having a headache and taking an aspirin or a Tylenol or a Nurofen. And generally, as long as the headache's not too serious, it makes it go away, or makes it tolerable. There's nothing instant with MS. You got, like you said, patience, patience, patience.
And trusting the process, so to speak, too. Saying,
Yeah.
no, I'm doing the right things, so this will pay off. It just may not be immediate. Having goals when it comes to exercise of any kind, it's always better to have a goal than to just show up and say, well, I'm going to do something. Having a goal almost always guarantees that I'm going to do more than I otherwise would. And even if I don't achieve my goal, at the end of the day, I'm going to have done more for myself physically to try and achieve that goal than I would have otherwise done. It's too easy to just say, well, I don't have a race coming up, so to speak, so I can take it easy today. If you make your goals important, you'll get important results. I don't know about you, Dom, but for me, I experience fewer symptoms after exercise as the result of having exercise. So immediately after, it's very common that I feel imbalanced, or, I'm a little bit dizzy or shaky. Before I started exercising as regularly, I experienced a lot of spasticity. That is almost completely gone now as the result of how much exercise I do.
The less exercise I do, the more spasticity I get. Nobody's born an athlete, I don't think. Nobody's born doing this. We learn it. What would you say to somebody to try it? Do it, get into it.
There are a couple of things I would say. One, do what you can. And what you can may be different from one day to the next. If it's your best, that's a great place to be. Two is being patient, understanding that you're not going to necessarily reap all of the benefits right away. It takes time.
I'd add on 3 to that and say you've got to trust. Because if you're willing to trust every other driver on the road when you get in your car, then you've got to also trust the scientists and the data that exercise is good for MS. I mean, to me, we could take MS out of this. Exercise is good for people.
Well, and that's one other point that I think is important to reinforce, is that even if you feel an increase in symptoms while exercising, that's temporary. That is not you doing any further damage to your body. That is temporary, and it should return to normal. Typically, what I've been told is if you haven't overdone it, you're going to get back to whatever your baseline is within about 2 hours of having completed exercise. One of the things that prevented me from doing exercise early on was that fear of everything I'm feeling. I don't like how that feels. And it's scary to not know whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. So I just stopped. And that reminds me, Dominic, I do have a set of rules for myself.
Hit me.
So,
Go on.
yeah. So the rules are: one, is it safe for me to exercise? If I am very imbalanced and I feel like I may fall, then running is probably not a very good idea for me. Or lifting heavy weights that I'm going to be putting over my head that I could drop, not a good idea. So that leads to the second rule, though, is can I tolerate the symptoms that I'm experiencing? So it's safe. Let's assume the answer is yes. I move on to question number 2. Often for me, many of the symptoms are not necessarily painful so much as odd sensations. And it's like, okay, this is weird, but it's fine. I can run, right? So if you can tolerate the symptoms, then you move on to question 3, which is, okay, now I've actually begun exercising. Have my symptoms progressed and gotten worse to the point of where I can no longer tolerate them? And if that happens, then again, we either adjust or say, okay, that's going to be it for today. And we'll try again, maybe later today, if not tomorrow. This is a lifestyle. So that means I am going to have to adapt at times based on what I'm experiencing, and that's okay.
Hey, Matt, I really appreciate you coming on. It's so heartening to hear somebody who's just taking it to heart. And from what I see on your Instagram, it makes you look like an exercise god. I know you might not be, but it's pretty cool. But hey, folks, follow Matt's Instagram. Have a look at it. Don't follow it if you don't like it, but I would suggest he's very motivational. That's what I like from it. I see it and think, definitely, this is a good thing.
I also started a private group on Facebook called Running with MS a couple months after I was diagnosed. I couldn't find a support group that didn't have some aspect of negativity to it or woe is me. So I wanted to start my own group that focused on the positive. Running with MS has just over 400 members from all over the world. We've been able to get a lot of like-minded individuals together to motivate and encourage each other and share our journeys together. And it's just been absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much for coming on the MS Guide. I really appreciate your time.